Play it day one with Xbox Game Pass. Play it on the all-new Xbox.
Welcome. How do? Welcome to Workshop Wednesday Live. It's JR here. What's up? What's everyone been up to? It's warm in here today. It is warm in here today, and we've got 7 printers printing simultaneously. So that's all our printers printing, and man, they're kicking out some heat. Because I'm now in this as my office. I've never really noticed how toasty this room gets. I can see aircon in my future. Wouldn't take a lot. We've also been having some interesting print issues as well, which I think is due to the humidity. I mean, it's Scotland, high humidity, so obviously you guys out there that actually know what real humidity is will be going, oh, it's not really humidity. But yeah, it's humid for here, and it's interesting. Engineer and Nighthawk, I think it was in the Discord server rather than the live chat, stream chat, we're talking about how high humidity, high temperature, especially high humidity, really affects SLA printing. And it's not something that we've come across. And that's probably due to the fact we live in Scotland and therefore don't really have high humidity or temperatures. But also because of the full mass printers being a more enclosed environment, they can effectively kick out moisture with their fans anyway. So I guess it's they are less susceptible to that as a problem. But yes, it's been interesting. So it's just been things curling as they've been curing. So we've lowered the temperatures a bit, and that seems to have sorted it for the time being, which is handy. Hello, Cal, all the way in other room land. So yeah, no, it's been warm. So where are we up to? This is Workshop Wednesday. Ghost and Coffee, welcome. Thought we'd do a bit of live casting. I've not done any casting in a while. First of all, thought I'd take you through why we're doing casting. So one of our biggest issues has always been our clear parts. Clear printing is a bit in its infancy, if I'm honest. And it doesn't allow us to print perfectly optically clear parts. 3D printers just don't do it. Now, okay, let me qualify that. They can, but not natively. Like, the thing that you get out the printer is not optically clear. You can make it optically clear, because what it actually turns out to be is it's the surface area. You're seeing the bumps, and whenever you have bumps, the light is reflecting and refracting on its surface, and therefore it doesn't look optically clear. So there's 2 ways of fixing that problem. One is to polish the part, like you would polish glass. Obviously, plastics are harder to polish because they're a lot softer material, so it's harder to polish to that degree because the grits have to be so ludicrously fine to be able to polish it. Or you can coat it in something that effectively fills those teeny tiny bumps in and creates a sort of hard clear self-leveled coat. So that's what we've tended to do. We've gone down the route of using a special aqua floor polish, which is UV protective, so it stops the parts yellowing over time. And that's where we get our arrow screens currently. Now we've been playing around with this stuff. So this is finest German engineering of a product. It's very cool. So my camera isn't on my desk this week because it's over there. So I'm going to move to the other desk. I won't be able to type. So we have a desk over there with the camera. But I can still see chat and everything. So it's all good. It's all good. Right. You won't, however, be able to see my face. So, positives in everything. So this is the magic. This is what we're currently playing around with. And this is... Yeah, this is a Spray Max 2K. It's a German product. And I can... Yes, thank you, Carls. I can see chat as well, so so that's not too bad. I don't know why I've got a delay on this camera. Well, that's really weird. Let's see if I can fix that delay. 1 second. Because that's just going to break my brain. No reason why it would. How weird. How weird. Check there's nothing in there. Don't know why that's being a little sluggish. Anyway, we'll cope. Oh, that's better. That's low. I don't know what I did, but I fixed it. That's fine. We're all good now. I was doing that and having to wait a tiny bit for it to... it doesn't take much to break my brain. That is very true. That is very true. So yes, so this is the magic, and I'll explain why this is a very, very odd can. But first of all, we shall grab an arrow screen that we currently put in the kits, and then something we've been playing around with. So we have always put clear parts into... shall use this box of dinosaur plasters as our how good can we see through things. This looks like a very sexy edition of QVC. Hello, James. No, this isn't QVC. This is actual makering happening right in front of you. It's very exciting. So this is an arrow screen, and so if I get it close, you can see through it. You can see the dinosaur. But it's slightly cloudy. And that's... So this is printed on a Form 2 printer and is coated with an aqua coat UV lacquer. So that's what's currently in the kits. So this is our latest iteration. Look at that. Isn't that just a little bit nicer? So if I can find something that I can put literally side by side them. Well, that might work quite well. That's the advantage of being in a workshop. Right, so old. New. Now, how about that, folks? That is a little bit damn sexy, if I do say so myself. So you can see there, you really can read those letters through that screen. Now, still 3D printed. As you can see, it's the exact same file. So what is different? Two things are different. One, it's printed on a different printer. It's printed on the Form 3 printer, which does have a slightly nicer surface quality for printing clear stuff. The second thing, it's got this on it. Now this stuff is the magic. It's all in German, So I've no idea what it says. It has pictorial safety instructions, which I assume I'm doing right. Now, you may not have seen a can like this before in your life. This is a very cool can. I've used one of these before. Now, looks normal, apart from this red thing on the top. What do we think the red thing is? The red thing is really cool. So you take the red thing off. Okay, this is just a lid. Nothing particularly exciting about the lid. This red thing is where all the magic happens. Because this is not a one-part paint, it's a two-part paint. It's a car automotive top coat. And if you look on the bottom, there's a weird other thing. So this red thing goes on here, and then you bang it on the table and hold it down. And what that does, this is actually two cylinders inside. So there's another pressurized vessel of one chemical that mixes with the other, and there's a propellant at this end that when you push this, instead of it spraying out at this end, you're actually pushing the propellant cap to push that second liquid into the first liquid. So you're actually mixing a two-part paint like you would when you do like a catalyst. It's a catalyst paint. But it's in a can, which is really, really cool. Now, disadvantage of that is you've got to use the whole can in 48 hours or you throw it away because it sets. So that's the disadvantage. So you've got to have lots of jobs lined up. This can isn't as big as you'd think. This is only a 400 milliliter can because it's got two pressure vessels inside. It's got twice the amount of propellant as you'd usually have, etc., etc. So there's actually less material in it. It's quite a heavy can because it's got the two compartments in it. But it's deceptively a small amount of liquid in it. So this is really, really cool. Not really used this on 3D printing before, but this, yeah, as I say, this is the result. And just to show this off again into the camera. So current arrow screen on the left, different printer, different top coat on the right. And that is literally the only difference. The file is the same, the orientation is the same, everything else is the same. Apart from the printer and the coating. So that is cool. That is really cool. That has made us feel very good about ourselves because there are two models, or a pair of 1 to 100 models, that we've had signed off by John Crew, signed off by CIG, since the end of last year. Although they were happy enough with our 3D printed, with this side, like we've done with the Arrow. The screen on this one is much bigger, and it allows you to see a lot more internals in the ship. It's about 3 times the size of the Arrow one, and we just weren't happy with this sort of transparency. So in the Arrow, you kind of get away with it because the things you want to see are right behind the screen. The pilot's right in behind it, whereas on this other ship, it makes you see there's an internal to the ship. There's actually an inside to it. So we wanted to actually be able to see it through the screen. So this now allows us to do it. So we're now at the stage where that ship is now back on the table, which is really, really nice. What about the Carrack, you may ask? Well, the Carrack has 2 types of clear parts. I shall just go and don't think is my cable going to be long enough? I'm going to have roaming cameras in the shop. It is going to be long enough. Wow, I can get all the way to the 3D printers. So I might have to work out a way of someone actually doing like mobile camera searching of it. Right, so this is a build platform that's literally just finished. So these are one type of clear part for the Carrack. These are the windows. So these are the windows that are along the sides of it. Let me just grab a Carrack. Oh, look, it's totally a Carrack. So all these windows here, down the side, inside the hangar, all these bits, turn it all around, on the side, those windows have these clear parts, ding, these clear parts inside them, so that you can light from the inside and the ship lights up where it should be, which is going to look super sweet. I just want to say this Carrack's looking very nice now, by the way. These magnets are absolutely spot on now. They've got just the right pull, so you should be able to hear this. I'll get my mic close enough. That's the magnet locking in. Pop. I love that. That's absolutely spot on for me. They are being held in really, really nicely. Same with the ramp. I love how there's that little bit of flexibility on the ramp. so that when you put it down, the ramp just settles. It just sort of sits, just, oh, so nice, loving it. So the other clear part we have on the Carrack is the nose, or the bridge, which is this bit here. Now, we could 3D print this. We obviously 3D printed this. We could 3D print it in clear, that certainly would be an option. However, I would really like, so that 3D printing it's plan B. So doing what we've done here, 3D printing it and coating it, that's plan B. Plan A is a little bit more complicated, as you can imagine. And plan A means printing an interior to this bridge. So the middle deck, some of the control consoles, maybe something to represent the seats, the globe, all that kind of stuff. And then casting it inside a clear resin block. Now that's not something we can do on a 3D printer. We can 3D print the bit we're casting inside it, but you can't use two different resins on an SLA printer. So we have to create the internals and cast it inside a block. So that's what we're going to start to process today, right here, right now, here. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to need to create a silicon mold. This is what the silicon is for. And what we need to do is have a master. So your master is your 3D printed thing that you're copying. Or it doesn't have to be 3D printed. The master is what you're copying. So traditionally, you would have a master like this, i.e. the actual piece. Now, you would then set this in clay and carefully sculpt the clay around it to give you a base so you can cast something against it. In this case, although this looks like it's just a flat pour surface here, we do need this to be exactly the right height, otherwise it won't go into the ship and sit in the ship correctly. So there actually needs to be a flat surface on here to stop this being too high or too short. There needs to be a small amount of resin, like a pool of resin, for it to go in, because what will happen is when we put this, when we've got the silicon mold and we pour resin into it and then degas it and then pressurize it, any air bubbles will compress, and there'll need to be a small sort of reservoir of resin above it, only a milliliter or so, to be able to take the place of those air bubbles, otherwise it'll actually come short of where it needs to be. So we need a two-part mold. And again, traditionally what you would do is you would make, you would take this and you'd make a clay mold, so put clay around it and then pour one half and then very carefully take the clay out and then put release agent on and then pour the other half. It's really time consuming and it's not very accurate. I mean, it can be, but it's very time consuming to be accurate. So if we want to make 20 molds, we've got to repeat that process 20 times. Why do we want 20 molds? Each time we cast this, it's about an 8-hour process between doing mixing the resin, inserting the resin, and then letting it pressurize and actually cure. It's a long process. So we want to be able to do maybe 20 at a time. So we'll need 20 molds. So the advantage of 3D printers, this is our master. So this is one half of a two-part casting master. So it's got our piece on in beautiful smoothness. Thank you, camera. So that's the, and this hasn't been glued to this. This has all been printed as one piece to this base. Oh, you were focused a minute. There you go. So this is all 3D printed in one piece. Now, this forms the bottom of our box, and then these lines basically create a key for the lid to attach to. The lid will be made by this casting master, so you can see the lines go in the opposite way, so they'll key in, and this gives us a pour point. So this is our little reservoir of resin. See, it's not very big, but it just gives us a slightly bigger hole to pour into. And this little bit here has come out a bit thin. We'll see if it survives. If not, we'll just reprint this. This was a really quick print. But that's an air hole. So you pour in the resin in here and the air can come out here. So you're not trapping any bubbles inside. So you've got a nice air path. And then that'll obviously, resin will come back out this tube and you'll know. So, all right, cool question, Golden Trunks. What's the advantage of pressurizing rather than degassing? So we kind of do both. So here is a degas chamber, which we'll be using momentarily. So what you tend to do is you mix your silicon together. You then put that mixture in the degas and degas it. Now, the reason why you don't tend to do it when it's been poured into the mold is that when you degas a material, obviously the way you do it is you put this lid goes on and you create a vacuum in this. Now obviously when you create a vacuum, pressure it's not zero. Oh, thank you very much. I can't read your name. Charlie Oscar 27. Thank you very much. My monitor's way too far away from here. Thank you very much for the follow. So you aren't actually getting anywhere near actual zero pressure because this is not a very big pump. But you're obviously massively reducing the air pressure in here. So any bubble will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So as a result, if we put this cup, you'll see it happening in a minute. We'll put this cup and fill it maybe a third of the way up. When it's degassing, it will froth up like a terrible beer, virtually to the top of this cup, because of those air bubbles getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Charlie Oscar, thank you. I can read it now because you're on my chat. Thank you, man. So it'll bubble up and bubble up. So if we did that when it was in the mold, it would literally bubble up and half the actual silicon would come out of the mold. So we'll degas it first. That'll get rid of the vast majority of the bubbles. In this case, we'll just pour it in and then pressurize it. So if there are any air bubbles left in, the pressure, which will be 60 psi in our pressure tank, will squash those air bubbles to be teeny, 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 tiny, so they hopefully won't cause any issues. The other reason that we must pressurize our silicon mold is because we need to pressurize it when we put the resin in. If you don't pressurize the silicon mold, but you are going, when you make the silicon mold, but you are going to pressurize it when you actually cast in it, any air bubbles in that silicon mold will be crushed and compressed when you pour the resin in, so it'll deform it, so it'll go out of shape. And it'll just suck in and be awful. So that's why we don't degas once it's in the actual mold, because it will just all froth and come out. If you're doing a very big mold, sometimes you will trap so much air that you really do need to degas it. In that case, you actually need to have a very large reservoir pool for the frothingness to go and then settle back down. Shouldn't be something it shouldn't be anything we have to do. It's when you've got undercuts and things, it's helpful. The other way to relieve that is to make sure, a bit like on this piece, that you've got places for the air to go. So if there was an odd shape where you end up with a hump on the inside that an air bubble would get trapped, you just make sure you have to have an air path for that air to escape. Cool. Hello, Pratt Gaming. How are you doing, my friend? So that's what we need to do. So I've made in advance these two boxes. What are these boxes made out of? They are made out of acrylic. They don't look it, but they are. I have a anti-blue Peter, i.e. one I haven't made earlier. So just did this on the laser today. So it's a very, very simple box made up of a flat bottom and then 4 side pieces. Click in like this to make a very rudimentary acrylic box. I've got to try and hold all the pieces together as I do this. Oop, that way. So no, fail. She got it, take it, Captain. Shouldn't be taking this in mid-air, should I? Right, there we go. So, very simple 5-sided box. We want to be able to take this apart and peel each side off when this is filled with silicon, because there are obviously tiny gaps on the inside that the silicon will get into and stuff. So, hence why it's wrapped in tape to stop the silicon coming out. So, we just take the tape off and then we can do it later. No, having the air bubble, I say the air bubbles at that point have been squashed to absolute teeny tiny things. Yes, I suppose they are under pressure inside, but resins are immensely strong. And I'd say because we'll have degassed, so when we actually pour the resin itself, we'll degas the resin in the degas chamber first to thoroughly get all the air bubbles out of it, then very carefully pour it in, and then pressurize it, and the pressurizing will push air out as well. It's quite good for that. But yeah, so if we degassed it a second time, we risk it frothing out. I said there shouldn't be really any air bubbles left in. You have about, from first mixing the resins together, the part A and part B, not the silicon, the actual resin, you've got 7 minutes before it needs to be under pressure. So you do have to be careful what you want to do in those 7 minutes. Degassing twice, the degas process will, depending on the size of your pump and the size of your vessel, may take a minute and a half. So you want to try and get it done right the first time so that you're not rushing It's getting it down to a finite. I say you've not got a lot of time. When we go full scale on this, we will probably get a second vacuum pump. We will also build. So I will get the CNC machine and actually cut wooden donuts for in here. So we'll basically fill this entire tub with wood, except for one slot where the cup's going to go, so that there's a lot less air to suck out of the pressure vessel, so it'll degas much faster, because it's not going to spend the first 35 seconds just dragging air out. And I say we might have 2 pumps. The other way you can do it, if you want to do it really, really quick, is if you have a couple of vacuum pumps and actually put it onto a pressurized cylinder, so you can sort of like get yourself. This sounds a really bizarre statement, like 100 liters of vacuum, if you understand what I mean by that. So you've got like a 100-liter tank that you vacuumize first, and then when you open the taps, all the air just gets sucked out very, very fast into that 100-liter tank. So you can pretty much degas, get it down to pressure or negative pressure virtually instantaneously, which again, if it's saving you 30 seconds, that could be really important, because if you've got 20 to use a syringe to inject into, it's going to take more time. It's one of the awful things of Brexit. The issue we have with the import taxes, because we can't. So the import taxes itself is made up of 2 things. One, it's made up of the VAT. Now, if we were still part of the EU, we would have had to have charged you the VAT, obviously, at this end first. So you would have just paid more for it when you initially bought it, because we obviously don't charge you VAT because we're exporting it. The handling fee bit is the biggest issue. We are currently attempting to get a business account opened with DPD. Our issue is we don't really ship enough stuff to warrant a business account, but we're trying to sort of wangle it so that they will give us one. The advantage of that is that it is DPD one end to the other for Europe, so they aren't actually handing it over from one company to another. So at the moment, because we use Royal Mail, they're handing it over to either Deutsche Post or whatever the native postal service is in your country. DPD, on the other hand, actually, DHL in your case, so DPD are actually in most European countries exist in their own right in those countries, so it doesn't leave the DPD system. So I think that if we can get a business account, that handling fee is €3.50, because it's just a digital thing. They're not physically having to hand over import documentation, and therefore it is a set amount rather than whatever they feel like charging on the day. The other option, as you say, is to have a partner company in the other side. But unfortunately, the way the EU is set up, you have to have one in every single European country and register for VAT in every single European country that we ship to, which is most of them. The great thing about Star Citizen is it's sort of universally and equally loved across Europe, it seems. So yeah, it's a nightmare from that point of view. So we'd have to set up and partner, and obviously they aren't going to do it for free, so they'd end up charging us. So I say that our main way of trying to fix this is trying to persuade DPD to give us a business account, so that we can massively reduce the handling fee. As I say, you'll still get charged import duty, but that, although that seems like a big bill, you would have had to have paid. We would have to have charged you for it if you were still part of the EU. So obviously, everyone who buys stuff in the UK, we charge VAT onto. But other than UK, we don't charge any tax anymore. It's all done at the other end, unfortunately, which is a pain. Would it be possible to degas each part separately and then mix while under a degas vacuum? Well, you could. Well, I don't know if you could mix under degas, because you'd have to. I mean, you vigorously stir it. So this is where you actually introduce most of the bubbles. Is that you have to vigorously stir it with a stirry stick for a minute. That's where you're folding in, a bit like a cake mix, because this stuff's so thick. You're effectively folding in like a bread cakey mix, lots of air into it. So unless you have a degas chamber and a spacesuit to do that, it's yeah, not really possible. I'd say it's yeah. Well, I hope you love it when you do open it. It's I didn't know when that limit thing was. I mean, to be honest, I think the limit was only like 20 quid anyway. It is. I know. Back in the day, there were some people getting stuff from CIG that they were charged more in import and handling than what the product was. But that's the thing. It's just because it happened so fast. Because Brexit was just this last minute clusterfuck. No one had time to kind of like make sensible systems for actually dealing with it, which was not ideal. So yes, apologies. It's one of these things that we'd love to try and we are trying to do as much as we can to mitigate it as much as possible, but it is one of the joys of export and import, sadly. So we have our two boxes. So I say these are just acrylic boxes covered in lots of tape, so it doesn't leak. This is the molding master, so that's going to snugly fit and then push all the way down into the bottom, so that we've got our master down there. So that's cool. We shall do the same for this one, so that we've got our second one in there. So that's what we're going to pour our silicon into. Right, how much silicon do we need? A quick volumetric calculation. So these are 50 mil square. They are both 50 mil square. So we don't want to fill this past the point of the tops of these, otherwise we'll lose them. So we only actually want to fill this one about 12 mil. This one can fill as much as it likes, to be honest. Let's do that 50. So we need 60. Right, so we need to do a bit of calculation. So So 162 milliliters if we ignore the actual thing we're casting, which obviously isn't very big given its volume. So we'll go with 162. That will work for me. So we have our mixing cup. One mixing cup. We have our silicon. We have stirry sticks. We'll need multiple stirry sticks. So this is one of the most important stages of casting. Making sure you've got everything you need to hand, and then think of what could go wrong and what you would need to hand to fix that wrongness. So I'm going to go with 3 stirry sticks. Wooden stirry sticks. Wooden stirry sticks are fine. We need to dispose of them afterwards anyway, because you can't clean. I suppose if you had like a Teflon one or something, you might be able to clean it. But there's a lot of unfortunate disposing of things with castings. Right, definitely need some paper towels. I'm even going to just tear a few off. Tear a load off, so we've got some, and have the rest of the roll to hand. So that's cool. We shall even stick this on one to start with. We shall also put some into the bottom of this, because there's no doubt it will leak when it froths up. We're going to move the Carrack out of the road, because we don't want to drop anything on our Carrack. Right, what else do we need? Gloves. These gloves are not big enough for me, but I'll try and tease them onto my hands. What else do we need? Oh, we need to check that our compressor is working, and that our vacuum compressor is operational. I say, there's the last thing you want if you've mixed your resin or your silicon and then it turns out it doesn't work because there's an issue, then that would be bad. Right, so let's move this into shot. We get it. Oh, you can see the pressure gauge. So that tap's open, that tap's closed, so it's going to suck out of here. That tap will stop it. That gauge will tell us. So let's stick it on and see if it works. Yep, that is depressurizing. That's sucking the air out fine, so that's okay. So let that back out, and then put it back to our using position. Just put that to hand. We also have our pressure pot here. So this is what we're going to put it into to pressurize it. This has this lid. That has air, so that's fine. So that's ready to go when we are ready. It's on wheels, so that's great for up on the desk. That's hilarious. Let's make sure I don't pull my cable out. Right, so I think we're good. I think we're good. So 162 mils, we'll say 160. So that's 80 mil of each part. We might go a little bit more than that, just because. So a certain amount of it is going to stick to this cup. So we have to account for that, and you sort of have to account for a higher percentage of sticking to the damn cup when there's not a lot in your mix. So let's do 200. So we'll do 100 of each, and that should be absolutely fine. Cool. Right. Stir before use. We are going to have to give this a good stir. There's not a lot left in these pots, I don't think. These are the same pots we were using quite a while ago, for those of you who have watched us do castings before. And they will definitely need a good stir. So it's not lumpy or anything. So this is a green silicon. This is Mold Star Platinum Silicon Rubber. This is very, very good for doing these sort of resin molds. Very nice stuff. It's nice and firm. It's not super flexible, so it doesn't deform easily when you're casting stuff in. So that's good. Right, so that's one. We'll give it another mix in a minute. Let's get this one open. So this is white this side. Put those out the way. Right, it's different stereo stick. We mustn't use the same stick, because obviously as soon as these two materials touch each other, they make a silicon. So we definitely don't want them touching on a mixing stick. I don't know really what would happen. I suppose you'd mix small amounts of it through this one, and then you would get just like lumps, or whether it would all just slightly cure. Don't know. Right. You can see the bubbles that we're putting in it. It's see, it's quite a viscous liquid. You can see those bubbles just popping out. So it would take quite a long time because it's so thick for them to just sort of come out naturally. So we've got our pot. Let's do this. Let's do this. So 100 ml. You can't see me pouring this at all. Okay. We'll try and do this from a different angle this time. Okay, that's our two parts. So I'm going to use this stirring stick. Just clean this one off. It's fine for us to use this one now for mixing. Okay, so when you're mixing this, you go around forbidden icing. You always have to go around the outside of the pot all the time. Make sure you're actually flicking the bottom. I always think these mixing pots are rubbish because they actually have like a dimple on the bottom. So this is where we're really going to introduce loads of air into this doing this. Forbidden icing. Yeah, I wouldn't want to eat this stuff. I think there's a, I think that was an epoxy. I think in Alias, the most terrible spy and car crash sort of TV, they have this whole thing where they insert an epoxy down someone's throat in 2 parts and it hardens inside them. In the typical melodrama of that series. Okay, right, so again, we'll try and get as much of this stuff off as possible. Okay. And now we're going to degas it. So, to try and get this so that you can see it. So, if I put that there, should still be able to see that through the glass. There we go. I can always move the camera a little bit. Right, okay. Let's do this. Okay, right. Oh no! Disaster! Disaster. 1 second, people. We're back. Accidentally unplugged it. All good. In my attempt to move it to show you what was going on, all went badly wrong. Right. So we can see it bubbling away. Starting seamless. Oh dear. Right, we can turn that off now. Just let it sit at that. So it's probably doubled, maybe trebled in height. Now, so the pressure's just stationary now. We're at minus 25, 27-ish. So you can sort of see so you can see how high it came up. And this is it just pulling all those bubbles out. So we're just gonna, so silicon has a fairly long curing point, so it's alive. It is indeed. It's like a sort of yeast sort of setup, isn't it? So we're not in a great rush with this because silicon takes a half hour to go off. So we'd rather have as few bubbles as humanly possible. So we're just gonna let them ease their way out. Quite therapeutic to watch, actually. But yeah, no, they're it's because it's such a viscous liquid. Even at this, those little air bubbles that are right at the bottom. I mean, some of these air bubbles that you're seeing now would be so small you won't be able to see them when not under this sort of vacuum pressure. I feel like I'm being unhelpful. No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So yeah, so there it goes. And we're just about there now. Last few tiny little bubbles just sitting on the surface that just haven't popped yet. But I don't think they're not seeing any new ones arriving. No, there's 1 or 2 just now bursting. Lovely. Right. Very good. Right, I'll try and put this camera down a little bit more carefully this time so that I don't accidentally unplug it. That's roughly where we were, right? Not really Ghost and Coffee. As long as we don't mix it and stuff. Again, sort of cake mix it out. We'll just release this pressure. So we have to be careful now with it, so that we don't. But I say it is such a viscous material that we'd have to physically agitate it to actually reintroduce. So there's a pouring technique that we're going to use that also prevents bubbles. So you can see now it's degasket, it's lovely and smooth. So which one are we going to do first? We're going to do this one, the small one first, because we know how much we need in this one. So when you're pouring a silicon or a resin, you start in one corner, you don't move, you just let it flow around things. And that's one of the features of letting it flow in and around stuff that helps you not get bubbles. Now again, there's no great rush with this silicon. It's going to take sort of 8 hours to fully cure in the pressure vessel. I just want to get the height just right. Want these holes to come all the way through, but only just. That'll be fine. Lovely. So we just see the very tippity tops of those. So now we'll do this one. So again, we'll just start in one corner and just let it flow around. Is when we really, really hope that we've got enough. Oh yeah, we're good. One thing I have learned with like these silicon molds is to not be stingy with how big the molds are. So this, thank you very much for the follow, Greb Mordeville. I'll probably, when you say something in chat, I'll be able to read your name better. I need to change the color of the font. I just can never bloody read it. So this will actually peel out when this is set. We can save this cup by just peeling that out. Even if we don't use it for a proper mixing cup again, it will be still useful as a cup. So we will just leave that to one side and just let that harden naturally. So that's fine. So we've got this one obviously completely filled with the silicon. You can't see anything on that one. I'm very, very carefully lift this one. So this one is just spot on. So that's just them just poking out. So we've got our pour point and our relief point. So I'm going to put those to one side. We're going to get our vacuum chamber. So I have to be slightly careful with this because it's on wheels, which is really handy. But so all there is in here is just more paper because this pressurization will probably push a bit of resin out through the tape maybe if I've missed a tiny bit. So we're just going to put them both in there, make sure they're flat. So that's fine. Then I'm going to get the lid. So there's these massive wing nuts that we close. Now these aren't actually originally built for pressure casting. These are actually built for very sort of large industrial paint jobs. So you actually fill these with paint, and then they're pressurized, and that sends the paint up the airlines to your paint guns. But they are converted by companies into these pressure pots for casting because it's cheaper for them to get a more mass-produced piece of hardware. Right, so I'm going to turn this so you can see the pressure. So we're just going to ramp this up to that 60 psi. Do not exceed 80 psi. We're not going to. We're just going to go up to 60. It's what my regulator's set at through in the other room. Beautiful. Awesome. So very carefully lift that onto the floor, keeping it level. And that's that kind of done now. So that's just going to sit down there for 8 hours to cure. We then need to tidy up a bit. But that's that cast. That is it. That is all we have to do. So casting the silicon is actually quite easy because you've got a lot of time to play with the silicons, which is good. So was the arrow cockpit canopy just a prototype? Would it be possible to get that more clear as an upgrade? So we've all from day one we've always had that in mind, that we wanted to upgrade that canopy. So yes, that's why I've been test printing the arrow cockpit to get it better. For anyone who wasn't here before, the before and after. So this is our new prototype of the arrow screen. Obviously you can see hugely clearer. So yes, when we've got the Carrack prints all done, and we're sort of on top of all we're sort of printing the diorama stuff at the moment, but once we're on top of all of that and all the Carrack and all that kind of stuff, what we will do is let you guys know when there's a decent stock of them. We'll do a load of the arrow screens, and then all you'll need to do is just order it as a spare part. So using our normal spare parts policy, you can just order a screen, and once we've told you that this is the case, the screens that we'll be sending out will be the new ones. So we kind of already have a sort of bit of infrastructure in place for that. We always knew it was a possibility because you don't glue the arrow screen in, because obviously it's one of these ones where you can stick it in one way for open and in for not. So we always knew it wasn't an issue from that point of view, because people wouldn't be gluing it in. So we knew we had a bit of time for it. So let's throw away all of these. So yes, so that is the plan. So yes, you will be able to upgrade yourself to the new arrow screen when we've got a bit of a stock of them, just through the spare parts policy. So hopefully that works for everybody. So okay, so that's them resealed like that. Cool. Excellent stuff. Right, that's kind of that done. Excellent stuff. Is there anything else to report? I don't think so. Short and sweet this week. I'll say the Carrack is very close to finish. We're just really on these clear parts now. We've got all of the cargo pods and all of these. So this is the one for the stand. I still need to cut the stand. And we just got to sort the turrets out again. Just another print of the turrets. But other than that, that is all done. Let me move back over to my desk. What I've managed to do is twist myself around every cable, around every bloody other cable, as you can imagine. Let me just... there we go. I should reach back to my desk now. And do that. Hello! I'm back. Take the blue gloves off. So, any other questions from anybody at all? If not, that was kind of my goal for today. Yes, it's literally like that. Because I've got a compressor hose going across, I've got a vacuum hose going across, I've got the camera lead, the other screen's lead. That's just dear. Max thrust, hello. But yeah, no, it's yeah, so that's cool. So we will do a follow-up? So I won't do the very first casting of the clear stuff live, because there's a tiny, minuscule, tiny risk that I'll go into anaphylactic shock when I do it. I am horrendously allergic to water clear resins. Now, what we're using isn't a water clear resin. It's a resin very much similar to resins I've used many times before without a problem, but it's not a resin I've actually used before. Just want to like what I've used before. So the company assures me that it'll be fine, and that the stuff in the water clear stuff is a horrendous chemical that quite a lot of people are allergic to, and it's only something that is in the water clear resin. Now, you might be asking, well, why aren't you using a water clear resin? Because that would make the completely clear screens. Well, no salesmen always tell the truth, but it's like they're on their own head. They've advised me. Does the resin have much an odor? Yes. The silicon doesn't. The silicon is completely odorless. The actual resin, when you're pouring it, is. Yeah, resins are horrible. uncured resins are horrendous. In general, they are horrendous. The 3D print resin doesn't have a smell to it. I think because it's a photo cure resin, it's not a two-part resin. There's no chemical reaction going on. I think it's the chemical reaction itself that gives off the odor. So that's commitment. Yeah. I don't know where the picture of me as Elephant Man is. See if I can find it. Last time last time it all went badly wrong. I can't remember if I know I'll have the picture somewhere, but God knows where it'll be, of my face. Oh, good God, it was pretty awful. Really was. I won't even know. I won't have a clue where I've put it. But yeah, my face swells up, my breathing gets restricted, I have to go on steroids. It's all very, very horrid. The issue was I didn't know that that's what I was allergic to. I thought it was stainless steel. So I know when I weld stainless steel, or when I have welded stainless steel, I didn't do it again. There's a weird gas that gets given off when you weld stainless steel with pure argon, and that gave me contact dermatitis on my arms. You could definitely tell it was that, because it literally started where my welding gloves finished and ended where my t-shirt started, and then it spread all over. It was horrid. It was just an annoyance. I didn't have any of the breathing issues or anything. And then when we did the CIG reception, we did these beautiful. Crispy did these beautiful clear cast upstands for the Javelin and the Idris models, and there was a stainless steel pipe that went up on the inside to put the cables for the LEDs through it, and I just used a grinder and just cut the stainless steel rods, and I had this huge reaction. And we of course went, oh, it must be the stainless steel, but I've cut stainless steel so many times before. In your head it's like, well, no, it can't be, because it's only when you weld it. And perhaps I heated it up too much and that released the gas somehow. It's like, anyway, I was past thinking I was inflating. It was horrid. And then when we did, so we got all the stuff to clear cast an arrow screen. Part of our endless process of trying to get our arrow screens better, before the Form 3 was a printer, back in the day, and it was one of those things that just put two and two together and went, oh fuck, it's that, isn't it? And that explains it last time, because that's what we were casting with. I didn't do the casting, Crispy did the casting, but we're in the same space, in the same workshop, so obviously I had enough contact with it when it wasn't fully cured. It's the same stuff the Grey Cat screens are made out of. I mean, once it's cured, it's completely inert, safe for everybody. It's obviously completely certified. It's the chemical. It's what's given off during the chemical reaction, when the two parts are curing into the plastic. It's horrid. But yeah, so this one shouldn't be a problem. Now, what you might be saying is, oh well, if it isn't crystal clear, what color is it? Well, it's slightly yellow. There's a slight yellow tint to it, and the reason that doesn't matter is because the Carrack screen is dyed slightly blue. And basically, when you put any kind of dye into this stuff, the very, very, very slight yellow tint is not visible. You perhaps have to change what color you're putting in ever so slightly to sort of take account of it. But if you're dyeing it a color, you don't notice the slight yellow tint. And to be honest, you'd only really notice it if it was a big block, so you're looking through quite a lot of it. When it's very thin, you really don't. But that is the other problem. You can't pour very thin things with this resin. The only resin that you can pour parts below 2mm wall thickness is this horrible stuff. It's specifically designed to do it. So that's why we've spent 2 years now trying to find a way of making these arrow screens and all subsequent screens. One of the reasons why we don't have any of the 1-to-100 ships, it's a blocker for our 1-to-100 ships. But this new print technology and this new lacquer, all stuff that we can use, all stuff that's safe, and it's just basically the same process we're doing at the moment, 3D printing it and coating it, just different printer, different coating. So it doesn't add anything to the cost. Well, a very, very slight amount to the cost, because the coating's slightly more expensive and the printer's more expensive, but averaging out, it's the same amount of time, commitment and stuff. So it's not a whole new process. It's not casting these tiny screens. It's not getting an external company in. We had looked at getting external companies in to do the arrow screens for us, but the cheapest we could get it down to was about £15 per screen. because it's not mass produced. These were being hand casted, and unfortunately, that's what that sort of thing costs, just because of the time constraints of, a company making all the molds, doing all that, and only doing a batch of 250 or 500. It's such a small batch industry-wise. It's barely a prototype run. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, our Grey Cat screens cost £12 each, and we did them in house. It's it's yes, Matt, and every single CIG ship, other than MISC ships, I think, have a tint to them. So there's always a tint, which is quite nice. We've never really noticed that before. Sorry, going back to the expense of it. It comes down to it's the absolute time it takes to do stuff. We have a relatively high minimum wage in the UK. So if stuff needs done, it's going to cost money. And that's why 3D printing is good, because we can expand our manufacturing capability with 3D printers without really needing any more people. It's one of these things that if you run a 3D printer, you need someone to run it. Well, that one person can run 5 printers, can run 10 printers. Yes, okay, perhaps when you get up to like 25 printers or something, that's all they're doing. It's not like, so I run these 7 printers at the moment in between me drawing. That's one of the reasons why I moved my desk up here, because when we are using 7 printers, I'm getting up every 20 minutes to an hour, depending on the length of the print, either putting stuff in washers, curing stuff, taking stuff out of printers, resending prints, when it's a new thing to print, organizing all the bits that are printed, washing them, all that kind of stuff. So you're getting up a lot to do that, but it is still doable, as a side thing, because most of the prints are minimum 4 hours up to 24 hours. So, it's not like they're finishing all the time, even with 7 of them. I hope you have good ventilation. Yeah, I have the window. Well, interesting. The 3D printer. So this is an interesting thing. SLA 3D printers don't give off anything other than heat. Hence why this room is so warm. I know FDM printers sort of give off a lot of fumes because they're effectively melting plastic. The SLA 3D printers give no fumes, give nothing off. There's nothing evaporating when it's doing it. It's just curing it with a very fine laser point. And yes, it heats the resin up, but only to 31 degrees, so high room temperature effectively. So it's not enough to make that resin evaporate or anything like that, which is good at 120 quid a litre. I wouldn't want it evaporating. So, no, be there scraping it out of the air. But yeah, no, the SLA printers don't actually give anything off. Yes, health is important. It's one of the reasons why I will not do MDF on the CNC machine. I refuse, point blankly refuse. I will not do any projects with fiberboard. It is hideous stuff. The sawdust is impossibly dangerous, and even with thousands of pounds worth of ventilation and filters and fine particle filters and centrifugal filters, it still gets through. And it's rubbish, and it's horrible material. Don't use it. I don't know why people like it. Horrible. I heard that home SLA printers, the resin is quite odorous. Not ours. And I say, so this is the interesting thing. I was talking to someone about this, about you should you don't have to use Formlabs resins in Formlabs printers. You can do this open mode, and you can put cheaper resins in it. Just like, but why would I want to? It's like, because the resin's cheaper. It's like, yeah, but then the resin's what the product's made out of. Water's cheaper. I could try and put water in it, and it just it's that whole thing of, the resin is the material we're selling. The printer, why get an F1 car and put shitty petrol in it or cheap tires on it or something? It's just like, if you're going to spend the money on a really good printer, why put the cheapest resin you can into it? Because then you're just going to get the result of the shit resin. Put the good resin in the good printer, and you'll have a beautiful result. The surface quality is because of the resin and the printer, not just one or the other. Yeah, no, I don't get it. So when our resins go from £120 plus VAT per litre to about £180 plus VAT per litre. So they are very expensive. So you do have to use it carefully. But no, the Formlabs resins don't have any odor at all. I mean, literally, just put your face over it. And again, I don't. What I don't understand about an odor is, um, if it's got an odor, it's evaporating into the air. It's gassing off into the air. Whereas you don't want that to be the case with a 3D print resin, because you don't want to. If any part of that is gassing off, then the consistency of that resin must be changing, because some part of it is evaporating into the air. So it's going to get thicker, or something will happen to it over time. The only thing that happens with full MABS resin is it will slowly settle out, but it has a mixing arm that mixes it very, very thoroughly before it starts printing to get around that. So even if your tank's not been used in 2 months, the first thing it will do, it knows it's not been used in a couple of months because it has a chip in it, knows when it was last used, and it will do a longer mixing cycle to make sure it all, it's all put back together. Yeah, don't want to be the evaporated plastic. That would be rubbish. That would be awful. Yeah, Max Rust MDF is a truly awful material. So it has two main problems with MDF. One, the dust that comes off MDF is finer than asbestos, like microparticles. It's exceptionally fine, and it goes through paint filters, it goes through pretty much anything but a solid wall, and even then it will try. It is horrendous, and it's one of these things where it's a bit like the microplastics. Anything that's very, 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 very small like that gets into your lungs and sticks in there. Your mucus can't get rid of it because it's just too fine. The other problem is that one of the principal chemicals that's in the glue that glues all those particles together is formaldehyde. So the cheap MDF is formaldehyde-based glue microparticles. You couldn't actually invent a more horrendous material if you try. You can now get formaldehyde-free MDF, which is the slightly greener stuff, but it costs a lot more because formaldehyde's very cheap, and of course all this stuff is made abroad anyway, so it's whatever chemicals you believe they've put in it is probably what they've put in it, and yeah, it's truly hideous. And I don't understand. So the only advantage of MDF is that it's fake wood. It doesn't have a grain to it, and I think that's kind of what they're going with. It's like, oh well, yes, we can cut it in any direction, just like, but you can cut birch ply in any direction. It's a plywood. It's engineered, both ways, and it's never use MDF. Like, genuinely, if anyone can think of a reason to use MDF, I will tell you what a better material is. In all the years that we've been doing theatre sets and TV sets and trade stands and furniture, I have never once thought, I could really use a bit of MDF for this. It doesn't have a single property. We dealt with a trade stand once that had been made out of MDF. There were 3-meter panels when they were built, and we took over the we were making the new trade stand for this company, but obviously they spent like £100,000 on this old trade stand, so we were sort of slowly building the new one, and sort of like first year it was an amalgamation of the two, and we built new panels to go alongside these ones out of birch. And when we got there, not having really dealt with MDF before, we didn't think about it. We were given all the specs, we were given all the CAD drawings. This thing had been done on a CNC machine in MDF, so it was fine. And when we stood our panels next to their panels, our panels were shorter. I was like, oh shit, we have made these panels the wrong size. It's like, no, we definitely measured them. Our panels were full 3,050 mil, 3050. Now that's an important number because that's how big the sheets come in. So that they are 9-foot sheets, 10-foot sheets, sorry, 10-foot sheets. Then the full height of the sheet. It's like, how did they get an MDF panel that was more than 10 foot? And we measured it, and lo and behold, theirs were longer. We measured some others, and they were shorter, or the right length. And what it turned out was that all the ones that had been stored on the outside wall in the warehouse had absorbed more water because they were near the outside wall of the building, and it was a bit of a leaky old building, and they had grown by 2 centimeters, nearly an inch, over 10 foot just from water absorption. But they'd also got fatter, so nothing fitted. And it's like birch ply you could leave in the rain and it wouldn't get any bigger. It would start to delaminate after a while, but I mean, birch ply will keep going for an awfully long time because it's so mechanically stable. It is so good, and it dries out really nicely as well. But yeah, I've never come across, like genuinely never come across a circumstance where, I mean, they say MDF is nicer to paint, because obviously it's got a perfectly smooth paper surface on it, so you've not got knots and stuff to I suppose if you painted a sheet of plywood and then you painted a sheet of MDF, well, just get better plywood, just get birch, get faced birch, get you can, yes, okay, you'll be spending a little bit more money, although MDF isn't cheap. It's also not light. MDF is pretty much the same density as birch ply, so it's not like you're saving a lot of weight. LDF, low density fiberboard, is more useful because it is a much lighter weight wood. But if you need something lightweight, there are better foam boards, there are better chipboard type core boards and things. I say there's perhaps for some people it's useful because they can use it for anything. And it's a bit of a jack of all trades that sort of just kind of shit at everything, but you can at least make everything out of it. But yeah, that's. I see it was larger. Yeah, no, not that much big. But yeah, no, it's just awful. Never use MDF. Just don't do it, people. I mean, we couldn't have built a Saber Raven and a Dragonfly and a Kraken out of MDF, let's put it that way. Did our birch ply. Couldn't have done it out of MDF. Going forward, there are loads of other things I would like to try that would probably be better than birch ply for doing these sort of models. I'm certainly more into my resins now, so I would like to be able to do the next big ship effectively with a resin surface somehow. I have 4 or 5 different ways I'd like to try to do that, but it's one of those things that it's never really been done before in the way that I'm planning to do it, just because we have access to different tools at most places and do. Our CNC machine was specifically designed for us. We had the factory build it to our spec, so it is quite an unusual CNC machine because of the custom bridge on it. So it does allow us to do very big carves, which a lot of CNC machines can't do. Oh, right, cool. There is, let's see, there is this most amazing resin. Let me find it. Made by Smooth On, and I think it's made by Smooth On, and it's so cool. Would I use it? I probably wouldn't use it because it's not accurate. It's not accurate enough, right? But I'm gonna have to Google it. Wait a minute. I wouldn't. You'll see what I mean when I find it. You could use it for I don't know what it's called. There it is. Found it. Right. We're going to have to go onto YouTube here for this. Please say the video is here. Yes, it is. Right. Okay. Oh, no. This one. I don't know whether you'll have audio. No, that's fine. Right. So I shall do the audio. So Smooth On videos are hilarious. This guy, Cole Brody, does most of their. Oh no, you might have audio. Slight audio. We'll mute him. Right, that's fine. So this is a ridiculous resin. And basically, what happens is you take a cast of something, and then the actual stuff that you have made the cast out of, like we've just done a silicon cast, you put it in water for a few weeks and it grows. And you can keep repeating the process again and again and again. So what this guy, so he can make a coin and make it huge. And these crazy things he has in front of him, I'm trying to find these blue things to his left. I want him to talk about those. So these things are dragonfly wings, like from an actual living dragonfly, and they took a cast of an actual single dragonfly's wing and just keep doing this process to it until the dragonfly's wing is that big. And it's just like, it's so cool. It's so clever. It's just like a water absorbing um, porous resin. And you can the applications for something like this are really quite incredible. So some people do it for like making, if you want to make a model of a giant, you life cast bits of yourself, and then just use this resin to make a huger hand and all this sort of stuff. And obviously the you do get a sort of quality degrading. But I think he shows you these in a second. Yeah, so these are the wings from the dragonfly. So these are resin casts that have been now taken in that mold. So they've that sort of thing, very, very cool. The reason I probably wouldn't use it for anything is that there's no guarantee of exactly how big it's going to be. I suppose you could soak it in water and like really carefully measure it every few hours, to make sure it's exactly the right size you want to get to. Obviously, it's going to expand slightly quicker in different directions. So to get a perfectly accurate thing of it, not really possible. So for doing spaceshipy type stuff, obviously not that great. But for doing biological stuff like a dragonfly, if you want to make a massive dragonfly model for like a Jurassic World type or a museum or something, what a fantastic way of taking an actual preserved creature. So that's its head, that's its eyes. And it's just like it is, yeah, it's like a manual microscope. I mean, to be fair, if you sort of think that's 1 to 3 weeks per thing, and he'd done how many had he done? About 6 or 7. So that's months of doing that. So it's not a quick process, but very cool, very cool. Yeah, very, very cool. Right, cool. Thank you very much, everyone, popping in. Yeah, see you all on Sunday if you're available. And I don't know what the plan for Sunday is. I don't know if we've got a co-host. I don't know if Drew's around. We should have a finished Carrack, if we're honest. We might not have this front nose printed, but all the other parts are either printing right now or queued up on the printers for the antenna and all that kind of stuff. That, as you saw before, those clear prints are done now. So we're literally just waiting for this front canopy, but we've done the molds now, so we're well underway. See you next time, guys. Let's see if we rate somebody. That would be perfectly pleasant of us, wouldn't it? Who we got? Oh, that's right, Detox. Excellent. Yeah, say hi to Detox for everyone, and yeah, we will see you on Sunday. Enjoy.